Welcome to FPP pattern making in Adobe Illustrator. I'm Laura Chase. I've been creating a FPP foundation paper piecing design series based on creating designs in Adobe Illustrator. These are practices that I have found. I'm self-taught. Would love to hear your feedback if you've found other more efficient ways of doing this. Let's get started. So in part 5, we're going to start adding numbers to our pattern pieces so that way each of the fragments inside the piece, we have an index number of when they should be used. I like to use the make numbers sequence script. Now a script is something you can do to automate things very quickly that you would have routine. It's kind of like what we do with actions, but a little more powerful. I will add links in the description to a YouTube video about the scripts, how you use scripts, what they are, and especially this make numbers sequence script where you can download that. It's a great tool for being able to add auto numbering into Adobe Illustrator in your patterns. The second part that I like to use is a template file. I have a template file where I have repeatable pieces when I'm making patterns. The one we'll look at today is I like to have my numbers in a little circle. You can choose what you want. I also have some different pieces of patterns where if a pattern spreads across 2 printable sheets, I have that, as well as something that would have a pattern color call out like you see there in the box. Let's go ahead and choose one of the numbers that we're going to start with. It doesn't matter, the make numbers sequence script that you have will look for where a number is and replace that in the order of all of the groups that you've pasted in. So when you're pasting in from the template, paste them in and then move them into the order of your pattern on your piece. So you can see I'm just pasting in what would be first, second, third, fourth. You can move them around. This is a good chance to double check that your order is working the way you expect it to work. And so just paste those into each of the sections. I try to paste them in so I'm not covering up the color code, especially if it's a small piece. Now you might look at this piece up here and you say, well, you can kind of tell the color code, but it might be a little bit confusing. So there is an option if you use your direct selection tool, which is A, you hold down Control tilde, and then you can click and drag that so that the pattern, only the pattern and not the piece will move so you can center that color code. Now select all of the numbers that we had pasted in from the template. Make sure you've got everything selected, run that script. You'll get this pop-up that tells you if you want to start between 1 and how many numbers. I've found you can put the right numbers in or you can go a little bit higher and it doesn't really matter. So I hit yes, okay. Make sure everything is as I expected. I've got the numbers 1 through 8. Now I'm going to select them all so I group them. And then I'm going to drag that group into A1, which is my section piece, just to keep everything organized. Let's do the same thing with our second piece. So I'm going to paste in our numbers from the template, and then I drag them in order that I need them to go in. So again, we'll double check that the sequencing works. I've got 1, drag it down to 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I've also created an action to run that script. So rather than going into File, Scripts, and selecting Make Number Sequence, I can just hit my Shift F10 and that will run it for me. So you say run that, it groups everything for me, and then I just drag that into the A2 group, simplifies the process. But you can see on this one as well, this is, remember when we put A2 in, this piece was larger than just one printed piece. So I need to add a section in there so I can make sure I can put this piece across 2 printed pages. Let's measure it. I like to measure to see how wide is this piece, like about where could I put that midline where I'm going to separate it across 2 different pages. So your measure tool is right behind the eyedropper. This is what I like to use off my template. Make your own template so that it has something where you could, if you've got to go across 2 pages, you can. I like to paste this in here. And basically, it's just a dotted line with a circle for lining things up. If you're going to print this off of 2 pages, this says, hey, I've got part 1 and I've got part 2, and you need to paste them together. In the next class, when we're going into InDesign, I'll show you how you're going to put each piece, part 1 and part 2, onto separate pages. It's very simple. You could also adjust, once you get in here, I can adjust that dotted line, make sure everything looks good. Now this is where you can see I have tape or paste part 2, tape or paste part 1. So then I've got to go through and I've got to create part 1 and part 2. So I've got A2 on this side. I'm going to need to create an A2 on the other side. But here I'm going to call this A2A or A21. Just be consistent, whatever it is that you're using. So I created A21, which will correlate to tape or paste part 1. And now I need to create the same thing. So I've got a part 2 to give directions that this will be the part 2 of the same piece that gets pasted together. I recently added the line up this circle just to make sure that when people are putting it together, they don't get just a little bit off and the pattern piece ends up not quite fitting. Group everything together, and I organize that so everything is in A2 now. Now we're ready. So let's continue as is, but I want to work with a piece that has some really small pieces, and what do we do in this case? So as you can see, our first 3 pieces are going to be extremely small. We can't quite see the color codes, and we're not even able to put the numbers in there without covering up the entire color code. So I want to show you one workaround that I have when your color code is too small or too large for the smaller piece. So if you take the direct selection tool, and that's your hotkey A, and select, we're going to start with our fragment 1. So select fragment 1. Now, if you go up into Object, Transform, and Scale, in Scale, you can uncheck the transform objects, but leave transform patterns. So this way we can shrink the pattern to 75% of what it is now, and it's not going to change the actual shape or size of the object. So you can see now I've got the whole WH in there. I'll hit Control tilde, drag it a little bit so it puts that WH right in the center. We can do that same thing, just, Control tilde, drag it around, but this second piece is way too small. There's no way I'm going to be able to fit an L5 in there. So in that case, that's where I have in my template, I have that little block with the call out and the arrow for a color code, so that way we can point to pieces that are too small and still designate what the color code should be. So I like to paste that piece in, kind of look around of where's the best place to paste this call out in so it won't get cut off in my margins, but it's also not going to hurt space between different pattern pieces I have. Use your direct selection tool, point to the fragment that it is you're trying to highlight. I like to enlarge it so I can get right into the piece or select right inside of it. Now, if you forgot what color it is that you're after, hit your direct selection tool. Your swatches, it'll show you what color it is, and then you hit your call out box and that will update to the right color code. Now we have the color code L5 pointing to the small piece of L5 that it should be. Then we can add in our numbers. So we'll go back, copy our numbers, and then we'll start pasting them in. Same as before, but you'll notice when I'm trying to drag these over, they're covering up my entire color code. So we'll paste that in and we'll show you how to fix that. So again, let's pay attention to order. Sometimes if I can't get the number right inside the piece, but I've got the arrow there, just put it somewhere where it's intuitive enough that the sewer will know what to do with it. So I've put everything in, and now I'm trying to go back and I'm like, well, what about those 1, 2, and 3 pieces that are way too small? I can delete that circle, so it's just keeping the number. So that way I still got my 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't have to include the large circle. You may have to adjust, especially for some of these smaller pieces, adjust either the size of your number or if you have a color call out, just making sure that it's intuitive what order things should be sewn in and what color each piece is. Once you have everything put together, then I like to select everything, and you could either use your action key or go in and run your scripts, either way. And as long as The numbers are in the group. When you run the script, it doesn't matter what the numbers are, they're going to update. So if you accidentally put in like your title for A3, it will update that number as well. So be careful. Patterns will not update. But it does create that group, so then I can move it into the correct piece. And then we'll continue to move on through the rest of the pattern. Thank you.